Welcome to episode 5 of the Silenced Witnesses Speak series. This is my series related to the case and trial of Nicole Daedone and Rachel Cherwitz that happened recently. And I sound so like an interviewer. I'm here today with Angela Richardson.
That would be me.
But I'm really excited about talking with Angela today. This will be a little bit of a shorter one, maybe like half an hour or so. But I managed to, steal a little of her time while I was in Los Angeles for this. And so, yeah, we're gonna talk from the perspective of, well, whatever perspective we want, really, but also the perspective of both having been on the defense witness list, ready and willing to testify on behalf of these women who are our amazing friends. And, I started this series because I felt like there was like the energy of truth in some way and wanted to come out on that stand and didn't get to because essentially the judge blocked the defense from being able to put up defense witnesses. And so I felt in myself a huge need to figure out how to express that thing that wanted to come through some way. And I figured that other people who were on that list may have felt something similar. And so I started going on this tour and talking to them to find that out, And so some of them felt like this forum was a fun way to talk about it, or fun, kind of a weird word, but maybe an important way to talk about it. And so then I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Angela Richardson. This is my friend Aubrey. And let's see, I worked for OneTaste for, I believe it was 4.5, almost 5 years. But I was practicing OM for almost 2 years before working for the company. My role at OneTaste was first the program coordinator, then the director of the intensive programs, which were our week-long programs that ended up being on the land. So our retreats, where we would go away for anywhere from 7 to 10 days and do a deep dive in the teachings of it's now Eros, and the practice of orgasmic meditation and coaching circles and guest teachers. And so I would, create with the team that whole week of experience. So
You were a cat herder.
I was also a cat herder. Yes, there was those. I was cat herder. I was professional hugger.
Mm-hmm.
I was
shoulder to cry
on. I was
sit with you through
stern mother. Also, like, you are fine, actually.
Mm-hmm. Desire evoker.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Permission granter. Delight
coordinator
and
like designer of experiences, curator of, I want to say, joy.
Yeah, I would say that too. And then there was just and then you sit and just hold it all on the ground. There was like a whole
grounder.
Like a grounder. Yeah, definitely
sure.
A grounder and a mover. It was a mover because you got to get to the other side. You get these things.
We're on a journey. We can definitely make a lot of stops, but we do have a destination, and we're going.
Yeah, and and very like, that sounds like, oh, we're in the stars, but it's also very practical, right? Like, there's also a schedule to it, and there's also a like meeting what's needed and the logistics, along with my friend Courtney Leposki, who we used to do it together a lot. So that was fun. But yeah, so it was a transformational week, and so the part of the nature of transformation is that it has to keep moving through. So
yeah, as you're speaking, I'm having like flash.
Totally.
So many memories.
Right. So many.
And
30 of them, 32.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. I must have known that and then didn't, but then forgot it, because that's a lot. That's actually a lot.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Angela was definitely just deep inside many, many, many experiences within OneTaste, and in the position to be able to relate with a lot of different people, staff, students, everybody. So definitely a great, like, that perspective is just great to have in this conversation, and I appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
So Angela and I got together for brunch a couple days ago, and had this. I mean, this is kind of the top. This entire thing is sort of the top of a lot of conversation lists with people I'm talking to. It's kind of what's on our mind. It's just big thing right now. And so we kind of went all over the place with it, into all these different like pockets, and the really personal, and what it means to us personally as who we are, and what does it mean for us as like women, and what does it mean in a larger scale as women, and everything. And one of the places that we went that I found to be, this is something I've been thinking a lot lately about, and I was even talking to my dad about this the other day, because I was trying to help him understand what it means to have a daughter who has a mission in life, like a mission, and I was like, and my dad's actually amazing, and he's been really supportive and awesome. But, I live on the opposite side of the country than him a lot of the time, and he wishes I was around like every day. And so I'm like, well, I'm on a mission. Like, you got to think about it kind of like if you had a kid that was part of the gay rights movement, or the civil rights movement, or pioneering for psychedelics to be brought into a deeper acceptance in society, kind of thing. And he actually really heard me, and it did help in that conversation, for him to kind of be like, oh, okay. And then he just started talking to me about the mission. It was kind of cool. But it got me thinking that it's a weird thing to see yourself like that. I wonder if people who were in those movements, and are like currently in different ways as well, of course, it's kind of an ongoing situation. I wonder if people who were in the thick of it, like, realize that in the moment, like maybe you don't, maybe you're just like, I don't know, I just get up every day and do the damn best I can to address this shit that seems really unjust and just not right, and you don't really realize until later that you were in the midst of a revolution, and or maybe it almost helps to not think about it like that sometimes, so there's not like extra pressure in your mind. And so I've been sort of maybe coming to terms with the feeling of that, and being like, no, it really matters, and it is a revolution. And I do feel one among many people who in their various ways are part of it. And it does have different facets, and it's not as easy to talk about and identify as gay rights, civil rights, psychedelics. It's kind of like women's sexuality, sexual sovereignty, the feminine, it's like, it's an important revolution, and it's harder to put words to. And so that was something that I thought that I kind of wanted to start there with you today.
Okay.
Yeah, and know your thoughts on that.
Whoa! I was like, yep, that's okay. So let's see. Yeah, I'll start with the first part, about like being a part of something that's new, different, and outside of the existing paradigm, which, when you talk about movements, I feel like that's the nature of it. Like a movement, and this is not a prepared remark, so I'm saying the thing that I really believe, but like a movement is like there's an ideology that is different from how things are going, like just the mainstream. And then we say, okay, well, we want to move that to a different location, whatever that is, like whether that be, for transgendered people, whether that be for Black people, whether that be for migrant workers, and in this case for women. Like there's a status quo and we want to move it somewhere. Well, what happens then is, you hit up against the membrane, you hit up against the place that's outside of what you currently do. And so then what movements tend to do is they tend to break the membrane, and then a whole bunch of other people get out, and then some freedom can happen and stuff. But I think that when you're inside of it, right, you don't I would imagine that you don't have the sort of full vision of like, well, what does this liberation mean, right? Like once we get on the other side of it, what is the reality? Let alone like as you're kind of like moving, knowing what that is. So I
Mm,
think by its nature, it's all very moment to moment. And when you look at movements, I think they call them grassroots movements
mm,
for a reason. It's like you are, I'm a gardener, so it's like when you're ever you're growing and building something, it's really like moment to moment, seed by seed, very experimental. And then I think most movements will have like you look at the Black Panthers, for example, or things like that, and it's just like, oh, here are the even religious movements, like here are the tenets, here are the values, here are the beliefs, that we're shifting towards. Like these are the things, like women are equal, and should be able to vote, or Black people are, also human beings, or very basic like philosophical ideas. And then you try those ideas out and they rub up against the status quo, and then there's friction. And I think when you're part of a movement, you are in that day-to-day friction. So, and I think there are those, there's all these different roles too, right? There's the people that are like looking and saying like, okay, here's the next thing we need to do. And then there's like coordinators, and then there's, movement executors, and then there's, like if there's like all these different like layers of things that happen because you're like having to like, it's like like we always used to talk about, it's like moving the wave, and it's not,
mm.
it's hard to move water like an oceanic kind of water, and it's that kind of thing. So I don't know, those are some of my initial thoughts. So I feel like um, I think like with you catch a scent of something, right? Like you catch and freedom is one of those things where it's like
Mm.
once you catch the scent of freedom, you're like, we're not exactly sure what it's gonna be like, but I've tasted a little bit of it, no pun intended, but also, I've tasted a little bit of it, or I've caught the scent of a little bit of it, or I've felt a little bit of that, and now I can't like go back. Spiritual freedom is like spiritual liberation is this way as well.
Mm.
It's like once you break out of like a certain like shame or dogma, maybe, and you experience like that spiritual freedom, you're like, well, I don't want to go back to only doing it that way. So I feel like we're pulled by like we're pulled by the feeling of freedom that I think we're all inherently wired to experience,
Mm.
um, without really knowing like what, like Martin Luther King said, what does it look like on the mountaintop? Like, he's like, I don't know what it's going to look like when we get there, but we do have to go there. So those are some of my initial thoughts
Yeah.
about that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's great. I think it's like you laid out sort of the bigger vision of
Yeah.
the movement, and then how is it for you personally through all of this?
Yeah, it's kind of actually a good segue because, so then if that's the big idea of movement, then what would like, so Angela, when you came upon this thing, like what were you thinking? And I would say it was very much like that for me. It's not like I went looking for a movement like to be a part of, like, that's not my nature, like, and so but I caught the whiff of something,
Mm.
I caught the scent of something. And, so then to answer your question though, it's like when I reflect back on it, and when I was like hearing about things about the case, first it was like, wait, what happened? Wait, what's going on? Wait, what are the charges? Even when the article first came out, like the stories of what happened. And I, in the role that I was in, I understood both sides, right? I understood how one could come to, an experience and then like not have a great experience, or maybe like, oh, actually, I, tried this program and it didn't work. I kind of felt that way. Well, I won't call names, but I've tried all kinds of different programs and workshops and stuff. Some of them work for me and some of them don't. So I understood that. But then like the extreme of it, of like the not having choice part
Mm.
really that 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 part feels unjust to me, right? To make a ruling around someone retroactively regretting their choices. I mean, shit. Oh my God, I regret a lot of choices in my. I mean, like, or I've had to like really get with myself about some of my choices. But like in the way that this was framed, from how I can gather it, it's like that was the part, and then to like the potential sentencing of 20 years for someone else's choices that they no longer regret. When, you know, it's not like you walk through the doors of OneTaste and you're like, oh, I think this might be like, like a soft journey.
Mhm.
Like we're going to read some stories and share some journal prompts.
Kumbaya.
And listen, no judgment on Kumbaya, but
No judgment on kumbaya.
but that's not what it was. It was very clear that that is not what this was, from the beginning, and it that's what made it compelling, And so for me, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's like emotion. It was like there we used to have that T-shirt like high risk, high reward.
That was our coaching. One of our coaching programs had that as the T-shirt.
That was the T-shirt. I
Just
actually
to tell
still
you
have that
how
shirt.
overt we were about the ride you were getting yourself into.
It was, it was a place where you had to keep making the choice to stay. And I also think this is not totally answering your question, but this is the things that I've been thinking about, because I was like, it wasn't like, oh, come and we're going to like sit and meditate and we're going to journal. And we did all those things, but within the context to stabilize all of the transformational stuff that was happening. And so you had to keep making the choice to stay. But what was interesting to me was always like, how easy it is to kind of jump in and out of, am I choosing this or am I not? Because what happens is that because of the nature of the kind of transformation that this is, it's not like the like soft flower opening. It's more like, oh, and for me personally, it's more of like, oh, what are the some of my deepest insecurities that I hold? And then the creating the environment to see them clearly, and then not just see them clearly, but to transform them, heal them, work with them, be aware of them. And that's not, it's not soft or pretty work, but it is real work if what you really want is personal liberation and freedom and transformation that many spiritual paths offer. And so, as you know, I'm a spiritual practitioner also, and that was like an 8-year journey. And a big part of the very first year is like, okay, where are you in victim consciousness in your life, and working with that? Where do you feel left? Where do you feel abandoned? Where's your, where are your pain? Like all of that kind of stuff. And so anyone who wants to like move through and find out who they really are has to do that. And so I just really feel like that was very much the nature of it in a very specific and particular, we called it the intensive. Like that was the name of
intense in the name.
That was what it was. And that wasn't gimmicky. It was like the idea of the intensive was, can we step out of this constructed reality, then look at what's happening within you in the community, so you're not just going to be like flying out and up, all over the place, and then work with it, without all of the like constraints of like work and kids and, like all of the, family and, even your own set of, usually it's this, your own set of limitations around, one's sexuality or desires or taboo thoughts or things that you only think about when we think nobody's watching you. So anyway, I kind of on a tangent somewhere, but that is what I mean. That's so when I guess when you asked me about like what did I think about the case, it just really had me reflect back on everything that I knew that it was, and just be like, yeah, but we signed up for it, like we kept having to choose it. And the places where, like, you know I mean, Rachel and Nicole were probably two of the people who would, like, really stand for whatever that freedom spot was. And so it's very easy to make them like the demon wrong person for it. They're human, and
Because
also,
they were the most, one way
yeah.
I think about it, they were the most willing to take the risk of really continuing to like speak to someone in
Hmm.
such a way of bringing them back to the spot they had said of the thing that they wanted.
Well, that's always the thing too, of like, it was like you had to say, at least at the end, you had to say, why are you doing this? Like, what's the spot of freedom? And that might not have been the question, but it was like essentially that, like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the thing, that has you feel kind of imprisoned in your own life, And so then everything about it was like working that spot, And so anyway, so I was just saying that, like, I just felt like, you know, the unfair part to me was like, when I think about what the spots that I got free, to just be like, oh, that was wrong in terms of how it went. But I was like, but it wasn't, though. I agreed to it. I signed up for it. I went through experiences to have that. And I think, um, I were there hard times when I was just like, oh, am I still choosing? Like, I regularly had to check in with myself, And so I feel like that's that's fine too, It's like I could have, not continued. I could have decided I don't want to do that, or I think I got to where I wanted to get to in this way. Um,
Regularly checking in on yourself was highly encouraged, in my
mhm,
experience. I also had to regularly check in with myself all the time and be like, am I a yes to this? Am I a no to this? Am I a
mhm,
yes to this specific thing? Am I a no to this specific thing? Like, how am I feeling about this? Like, where's my willingness in this? Like, am I gonna really push my edges here, or am I uncomfortable with that? And I don't actually want to push my edges here. And then how am I going to communicate that? Or like, am I like all of that stuff? I think
yeah,
it was an environment that ended up actually helping me create the ability to do that. I didn't really
100%.
have that
No,
before.
same. I was just telling somebody this just the other day. I was like, oh, I always described it as like I didn't have that switch, or that, like, that meter that said, hey, you're kind of,
You're nearing the
edge,
edge.
right? I would just be like, until I was like, oh my God, I'm falling over. Like, what's happening? And it was through this experience that I learned, first of all, that there was such a thing as a meter, how to detect it, and then how to work with, oh, I'm getting too far. Oh, a little bit less, little bit more, like, trying. So it was definitely has helped in my life tremendously, to, like, that whole experience. And then I was also that just made me think about, we also use really simple things like red, yellow, green. I learned what
All the
red, yellow,
time.
green was.
All
And
the time.
I'll never forget, one of my first experiences was like, someone was like, I think you're in red. I was like, what's that? And then just using that of like, oh, I am, when I'm this way, this is what's happening. And like, okay, I'm going to stop now, or I'm going to pause now, or I don't know, but I'll be back
We're gonna
maybe.
slow it on down.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are some
Mm.
thoughts I'm having about
Yeah,
that one.
that's great. It had me want to ask your thoughts on oh gosh, I have to figure out it's always like parsing out these really kind of tangled together complex
Uh-huh.
things that get all sort of collapsed into each other, and
Mm,
then so much of this sort of unraveling of this whole thing journey for me has been learning how to like parse out these really, so I guess, I mean, you talked about at the very beginning of this question, you talked about being not, you didn't use the word disturbed by, so I'm, but that's kind of how it landed over here, and I could be
okay.
wrong, but disturbed by the part in the whole thing of people not having choice, or people saying they didn't have choice,
Mm-hmm.
and that being really what like the case was built on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I want to go more into that. Like, what are your I mean, just as a woman who has worked with thousands of people, both in OneTaste and in other organizations and in other capacities for many years, um, and a woman who, I mean, I consider to be just like a wise woman on the planet who's continually bringing a certain frequency, or like bringing a certain transmission and holding a certain frequency with a lot of grounded steadiness, kind of no matter what changes in your outer form person, you know. I want to know your thoughts on what how does that happen, like, did you know, how does someone forget, how does someone decide to forget, how does that
Mm,
happen? Like, and then also if you have thoughts on the difference between, because it's not like there weren't constantly ways to improve, and
mm,
it's not like there weren't intense interpersonal things and
for sure.
hurts at times
Sure.
and complicated situations between people on all levels. It was a community. It was often in many ways as close as family.
Mm-hmm.
The relationships between people in all the forms were very close, very intimate, very intense at times. And so there's definitely like interpersonal stuff.
For sure.
Um, but then somehow the not somehow, I mean, in my other videos and stuff, you can go review those. I'll tell you all about how I think it happened. But the justice system got pulled in to like reinforce all that,
Yeah.
and that is freaky to me.
Yeah.
Freaky, like weird, and not a good sign for the larger view,
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of a micro question and a macro question. So I'll just let you sort of go wherever with it.
Yeah. If I think I'm tracking what you're saying, it's like, so this is like what I was saying about when you enter something, right? So with a set of, like, you choose to enter, and you enter with like this into an ideology, right? If you go into Buddhism, here's what it is. You go into, New Thought, Ageless Wisdom. These are our values and thoughts. So you go into, our arrows. Here's our theories, values, and thoughts. So you enter a system, and you agree to like be in that system. You agree to be in that teaching. Let's say it that way, right? And you asked the specific question about how does one forget. So when you I used to think about this on the land all the time, because on the land you would cross over, there was a bridge, like a one lane bridge, and on one side of the bridge was like this little rural California town with a little general store and Twinkies, and then on the other side was like this beautiful, multiple acre land that was magical. And crossing over the bridge was like crossing over into like this, you know, new reality, different reality. Now, at some point, when you cross back over, you have to like re-enter. And part of the re-entry is integration. Like you go back to like, okay, like Twinkies. I don't eat Twinkies, never mind. But like, and I think people forget on the re-entry. It's kind of like going out of the country. It's like I went to Brazil several times, and every time I would come back from Brazil, immersed in the culture and just being, just everything that Brazil was, I would always come back to the United States and just like, oh, it's so harsh in here. It's so like there's what do they call it? Cultural
Shock, culture
well,
shock.
culture shock,
Oh.
but there's another word, but yeah, basically it's like culture shock, right? And you have to reacclimate to it, like you go on a hike, you got to reacclimate to like the air and all this stuff. So I think that upon reacclimation or upon reentry, you then see like my silly example. You then see Twinkies and you're like, do I eat Twinkies? And people are like, you love Twinkies, and you're like, I don't know if I don't.
Used to love
You
Twinkies.
used to love Twinkies. Like, look at this picture of me, you and Twinkies. Like there's all these external things that are reinforcing, but like people didn't see the transformation that happened. Like you go away on a trip, people, you can come back and show people the slideshow of all your photos, and people fall asleep. Why? Because they weren't there, so they miss the nuance of who you've become on your trip, and so then they're like, why were you doing that? You don't even like that. And you're like, oh, well, maybe I don't. And because the whether it depends on whether a person is able to like stabilize that transformation. When you're able to stabilize it within yourself, like I made that choice. And now and some of these teachings, they're provocative. Like, oh, I'm going to lead with like desire and not productivity. I'm going to make my relationships one of more unconditional love and less transactional with each other. Well, that is not what that's not what relationships are like on the
Those
other side of the bridge.
those don't gel easily with
They don't always, because
most realities.
especially when, if you're in a relationship, it's like, and you're used to like doing a dynamic dance with each other, then you come back and you're like, wait a minute, I'm free, or whatever the version of that is, like, and then the partners are like, what are you talking, so I think, you throw in like, oh, now you got to go back to work. You throw in, how do I practice OM when I also am a mother? When I also have family responsibilities. How do I integrate all of these things that I want, that I've discovered that I really want? And I've got all this external stimuli outside saying, with these concretized identities and ideas and responsibilities, that are like, no, you can't just. You have a
you
desire.
can't change
You can't
too much.
change.
You can do a little,
Yeah.
but not
As-
this
but
much.
and so long as we're still comfortable.
Right.
Like, don't
Right,
make
right.
things uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like that. So all that to say that, so how does one forget? It's more of like, with so much external stimuli encroaching on this very fairly new discovered like sense of like freedom, that one can't, it doesn't have roots yet, so then it kind of like gets smashed. It's like when you plant when you grow something from a seedling, you have to wait for it to have, you don't put it outside in the conditions, because it won't make it,
Right.
so
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's a really good reminder.
yeah.
Okay, so that's all the time we have today.
Oh,
For the
gosh, I have so
Angela,
much more to say.
the
Sorry.
Aubrey Angela show. Well, I really do think we should do a part 2 sometime.
Okay.
And that's what we have for episode 5 today. We don't know. That part 2 will be episode something in the future.
I love the number 5.
You do?
I do.
Oh, cool. Okay. So thank you for doing that, and I love talking about this stuff with you, and I do think it'd be really fun to do a part 2, and that's it for episode 5 of my Silence Witnesses Speak series. Until next time.